Our next speaker will be Professor Qingsi Li, who I introduced earlier. I think he's back in. So I just introduce him again very briefly. Professor Li is professor at the School of International Studies, Renmin University, where he teaches US politics and foreign policy, China-US relations, and Chinese foreign policy. And he has also worked as Congressional Fellow on Capitol Hill and has published extensively. So Professor Li, the floor is yours. I hope you're here now and can hear you, can hear everyone, and wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Desai. I'm so sorry to waste a lot of time. It's very unpredictable for some technical problems. I tried several devices and eventually made it. Okay. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. I think it's the high time to organize such a discussion meeting to share views with each other. And I'm talking on why should NATO be dissolved right now. This is something I want to share. Since I got the invitation very late, only 2 days ago, I only speak from my general understanding as a Chinese scholar, as what I understand, and for most of the Chinese would have the similar kind of understanding. So let me try to share with you. First, I think NATO is harming both regional and global peace and stability. I will list my views. First, needless to say, NATO has played the role of keeping the balance between the Union and the United States, the two blocs during the Cold War time, and have protected the EU countries, European countries. That's the history. As Cold War relics, Cold War, organization is rival. Warsaw Pact had already disbanded in 1991, July 1st, just as the Indian Communist Party General Secretary appealed to dissolve NATO. So there's no use for NATO to continue to develop and expand. That's the first point about the history. And secondly, since 1991, NATO has expanded 5 rounds. I'm sorry, I didn't listen to the previous speakers. I would have to stick to what I have thought. That further is intensified, the Russians uneasiness, insecurity, caused the Russians, retaliation, worsened Russia-European relations, and worsened the European environment, security environment. Provided the Russians, excuses to retaliate by armed forces and even maybe expand its military expenditure the following years. Thirdly, even the NATO is not determined to dissolve. And NATO's functions should be transformed into something non-militarized, as it indicated, as the world expected to transform into a kind of law politics functions, such as protect humanitarian disaster, counter all kinds of cross-border crimes, such as terrorist attack and etc. And the fourth, contrast to the world widespread expectations, NATO does not disband, neither has it transformed into non-military organization, but actively got involved in, regional issues all of NATO area. Military involvements, just like Afghanistan war, Iraq war, in Libya and Syria. And NATO's highly involved military operations in outside of NATO areas brought disasters to those relevant countries and regions, and the aftermath can hardly disappear for many years. Fifth, more ambitious, more aggressive is that NATO expanded to try to create a kind of so-called small Asia NATO in Asia. Try to make NATO Asianized. Plus, Professor just now mentioned the code on AUKUS. Its purpose is to try to align NATO members with the American Asian allies to form a kind of complete containment in segment against China and Russia. This is almost the last step to finish the mission right now. So the US supported, encouraged NATO ambition to contain China and Russia. Is definitely a kind of effort to repeat the Cold War. It's definitely against the, the trend of the world peace and the development. And the next, the US and NATO in Ukraine helped develop neo-Nazism. It was really horrible. Evidence disclosed one after another. It's definitely anti-human, very cruel. It's something that the Second World War, the winners like the US and the Soviet Union together with China has helped defeat it. Those Ukraine Nazi organizations have slaughtered dozens of thousands of Ukraine people, regardless if they are Russian, national, or Ukraine. And what's more horrible, so many evil operations in underground factories to torture children. It's hard. It's really beyond my description. After I taught my students, none of them would believe in this. But we know such kind of wrongdoing will eventually backfire. Even today, the Ukrainians could kill themselves, their own people. Maybe in the future, both the US and NATO would also suffer backfire. We will see about that. And then lastly, I think there are widespread rumors right now about the so-called Grand Reset. Very, very horrible, ambitious, and evil plan to reduce the the population, the worldwide population anywhere, no matter East or West. It's really very horrible. And I think Russia, Ukraine, the war, stimulated by the US and NATO is part of that ambition, part of that plan. So this is the reasons I listed, and Next, I will focus on the the damages, impacts of expanded NATO. First, it will kidnap Europe. Europeans are rather, harmed than protected by the US. Actually, that to say, Europeans believe that they were protected by the Americans through NATO, but actually they were also harmed by such kind of arrangement. Even after they decided to expand their military expenditure, they can only intensify the American positions, influences through the NATO, not at all, strengthen their independent defense and foreign policy. So that's the first point. Secondly, NATO would be a kind of to split Russian and European relations after not too accomplished. Biden administration stepped in to create the problem for Russian and Ukraine bilateral relations. So everybody understands it's very close, between the two events. So I hope that the Europeans understand. They really kidnapped. They seem to have the common defense with the US against the assumed Russian threat, but actually they also suffered from such kind of effort. And thirdly, 20 years after the Cold War experience demonstrated that no matter it's Afghanistan war or Iraq war or Syria war, the US and NATO try to resolve international conflicts through military means. It is wrong. It cannot resolve any problems, and it can only bring more problems for the conflicts. I think enough lessons for the world, even for the American people. And I think Afghanistan war is definitely a good case. Who paid the price? Yeah, yes. And okay. Lastly, I hope, as the Chinese always emphasize, 100 years of great change is accelerating because of pandemic and economic problems. Anyway, we realize, I think the American proposed, solutions to conflicts such as Russia, Ukraine, is not workable. We have to rely on peaceful means, negotiations. Big countries like the US and China should sit together with Russia and European countries, together with India, to prepare for peace solutions. We shouldn't compete for armed competitions. And I hope through our dialogue, the conference, we can try to exert influence on the decision makers in the US, in Russia, Europe. Hopefully we could try to bring the conflicts as quick as possible through peaceful means. Thank you so much.
I'm Michael Hudson. I'm appearing here for the International Manifesto Group. If you like this video and ones like it, please subscribe. For more information, go to the address on the screen.